Good evening, friends, and welcome. I am Jeanette Jerzik, National Director of the She Said Project, and I am coming to you live from a guest bedroom in my house that I've converted into my swanky new home office.
And I'm Carrie Rosso, co-founder of the She Said Project, and I'm coming at you live from my swagger wagon, in my driveway, and in my pink fuzzy robe, because this is the only place where I can be alone.
She Said is a place where women can come together and share stories, to laugh together and sometimes cry together, to be brave and vulnerable together.
What started as a live one-night show has grown into so much more. She Said is a community of women supporting women. And women. And more women. All the women's.
And it takes a community to put together an event like this. We'd like to thank our speakers who will be braving the microphone tonight, even if it is the microphone on their home computer.
And we want to thank you for joining us, because listening to one woman's story is honoring all women's stories.
And we need to thank our sponsor for making this event possible. As you see, I am now lounging in my gracious drawing room designed by the McGuire Home Collection. Joining us live is Nicole McGuire herself. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, I am Nicole McGuire, founder of the McGuire Home Collection. I am so happy to support the She Said Project as they present this fabulous showcase of women who are daring to be brave and vulnerable by sharing personal stories that will bring us together at a time we have all been feeling so far apart. At the McGuire Home Collection, we strive to empower women to create their best homes, live their best lives, and work in challenging and fulfilling careers. I personally invite you to be my date this evening. The show is about to get started. Come with me.
February 22nd, 2020. Just weeks before we found ourselves facing a global pandemic, the curtain closed on the 6th live That's What She Said show in Champaign, Illinois. The beloved community event has touched the lives of thousands of women through powerful, intimate performances by women you know and love. In 2019, the She Said movement picked up momentum and grew into more communities and reached new audiences through the She Said Project podcast. The mission is simple, exchanging stories, but the results are extraordinary. We have seen the power of women supporting women on stage, in our communities, and in our hearts. As 2020 continues to bring new challenges for us all to face, we strive to be a safe space for women's voices to be heard. We stand together for equality and justice. We celebrate the healthcare workers and each and every woman standing on the front line of the global pandemic. We look forward to businesses reopening and theaters turning their lights back on. But till then, we are going to keep finding ways to share women's stories, because together we are stronger, even when we are apart. Tonight, we are not limited by space and time. Tonight, our community is larger than ever before. Tonight, we present 7 women who will virtually blow you away. Please join us in welcoming your She Said Showcase speakers.
I know. You just took a deep breath and you rolled your eyes. Me too. Hurts just hearing it, doesn't it? 2020. Ugh. Has anybody found a glitch in the matrix yet? Because if you have, let your girl know. I'm ready to jump right through it. Hi, my name is Tera Lynne Fister, and if there is one thing that this year has taught me, it is that the ability to adapt is one of the most important things for survival. Seems obvious, I know. I read about it in my science books growing up. Only the strong survive, right? But I cannot think of a time in my lifespan where every human being on the planet has been tested on their ability to adapt at a singular time. Think about it. When was the last time the entire human race was told to stop making money, crawl inside your house, but make sure you survive? Pay your bills, teach your children, afford groceries, but don't lose your mind with an unknown end date and a seemingly little help or answers for the common man from our government. What is actually going on? What are we doing? How are we going to do this? Who knows what's happening? Can anyone hear me? I am a woman in the music industry. I'm an artist, and I'm an independent artist, which means technically I am also a manager. I'm a social media expert. I'm a promotions team, a PR team, a booking agent, a sound man, a guitarist, a lyricist, a producer, a merch team, a graphic designer, a videographer, a photographer, an escort, my own makeup and hairstylist, my own driver, my own bank, a therapist to my bandmates when needed. I am a one-woman show. Nothing happens and the checks don't come in unless I make the phone call, the email, or the knock on the door. Sometimes forcibly if needed. Girls, I know you hear me. And it has been this way my entire professional career. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee via St. Louis 8 years ago at the ripe old age of barely 21. I've been a professional musician and artist ever since. Making music is my real job, and it is no small feat. While artists like myself have been suffocated this year, we have all experienced 2020. So I figured I would give some insight on what this year has been for my musical brothers and sisters. When March 15th, 2020 hit, my entire music community and profession was shut down. We were the first industry to really be flattened, and we are going to be the last to regain traction, with rumors of stadium tours not being able to really recommence until 2022. Now, the music industry is huge, so I'm going to discuss strictly the effect on my corner of it. My day-to-day grind, most importantly, is pushing my original music. It is pushing me, if you will, allowing you guys into my soul to gain connection and healing and peace via music. That is my #1 top priority. My second daily grind is earning cold hard cash on the streets of Lower Broadway, making music in the honky tonks. This allows me the ability to afford my budding artist career while honing my craft daily. Lower Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee is an interesting, trying, magical place. If you haven't been, I suggest a long weekend. I promise you will enjoy yourself. It's basically Disneyland for adults, ladies. There are few to none like it in the world. I feel as though the word grind was invented on its doorsteps. Every band on every floor of every bar is playing for tips. It is how we earn our living. Yes, there is a base pay, but it is not close to enough to actually survive on. There is never a cover charge, so we literally live out of those tip jugs, never knowing what the day is going to bring. But just like anything else, you learn what works and what doesn't over time, and long story short, I've been able to make a decent, good living out of those tip jugs for some 8 years now. Those jugs no longer exist, and they haven't since March. What does an artist do when they can no longer sell their art the way they have been selling? Where do performers perform when there is no stage to hold them up? How does one tell their story when there are no ears in the room? How does one pay their bills when their job vanishes into thin air overnight? Who do I call to book a gig for not only myself but my band when there is no gig to be had? How do I pay my band when there is no money coming in to pay them? They have families, bills, cars, etc., and I can feel the pressure of their impending financial doom on my shoulders. So what did I do? What am I doing? What can be done? Adapting. Turning the world upside down and looking at it with a new perspective. I had to quit complaining about how everything is gone and everything is different and uncomfortable and unknown, and I had to change my way of thinking. I can no longer waste my breath being frustrated with a government that isn't doing more, isn't taking care of its people, or that the companies I have played for 8 years really offer no condolences, relief, or remorse. Just kind of, it is what it is, good luck. I had to pull myself up by my big girl panties and figure it out for myself. I had to do it as women have always done and think outside of this male-dominated society's box. I had to be ahead of the curve when I didn't know there was a dang curve coming. And I get an amen.
Amen.
Sound familiar? I am sure it does. Us women have been fixing the world's problems since the beginning of time. Our bodies are literally what the world's most powerful individuals emerge from. And guess what? They come out naked, hungry, and looking for their mom. They are looking for a woman to save them. And we do. And we always have, and we always will. It is an honor. So what did I do? What does my career look like these days? I have moved my entire business to social media. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok. I am thriving doing Facebook Lives, media takeovers, and little solo acoustic shows here and there in deemed COVID-safe environments. I focus on pushing my merch sales and asking my audience, what do you need from me? Without social media, my entire community would have vanished overnight. Can you imagine if radio was still the only frequency on which all of us artists survived? Can you imagine the extinction of my people that would take place? The art lost. For all of those hearing this, thinking it's just music. You do not comprehend what your life would look like without music. Right down to the jingles you can still remember from your childhood for product sales. Ever watched a movie without sound? Ever ridden in a car and only been able to find static? Did you have a first dance at your wedding? Ever started randomly humming a song and you have no idea why? Music is in our DNA, right down to our heartbeat. There is a reason every single other industry turns to us creatives to sell their product. We are the human connection. Art is what brings life to numbers on the Excel sheet. Art in any fashion. And social media has truly saved my art. And being an independent artist, it is currently the only way my business is able to survive. Which, shameless plug, if you have a heartbeat and you love music, look me up, let's be friends. So, let's sum this baby up. It turns out 2020 gave me a huge lesson that I am still learning. In my adapting to the times, I learned how little money I actually need to survive. I learned how much money I wasted on little things every day. It taught me how much energy I was wasting on fruitless friendships. It taught me how much energy I was wasting playing too much downtown, tiring my voice and my creative juices, leaving little to none left for my original projects. It has taught me to love my alone time, to use my alone time to listen to my inner thoughts, organize them, and attack them appropriately. I personally think the world was getting too loud, and the universe responded accordingly, making us humans all shut up, sit down, think, and readjust. 2020 taught me that I am my biggest priority, that my mental health and well-being is worth more than any sum of money, or gig, or friendship, or business relationship. Although, side note, don't let me fool you, I'm still an advocate of the saying, it is more comfortable to cry in a BMW than a Honda. I have big dreams. I have lofty goals. I like nice things. I want the backyard my dog deserves. And guess what? By adapting to the times, by readjusting my priorities, by listening to my body and soul and adjusting accordingly, my dreams are exactly what I am going to achieve. The dream continues to get bigger because by adjusting my energy and focus, I am checking them off the list one dream at a time. I'm a woman in the music industry. 2020, hear me roar. Thank you.
Tera. One day in late June of 1998, I found myself at my doctor's office, bewildered, shaking, and crying. I have no idea how I got there. I don't even remember driving there. I didn't have an appointment. When I left home that Friday morning, I thought I was on my way to Walgreens to pick up a prescription for my very sick mother. What I didn't realize was I was actually on the road to a breakdown. On my 47th birthday, a few weeks prior, I had had a great day. I received blue hydrangeas from my husband of 28 years, a nice dinner at home in order to accommodate my mother, cards from my two sons, and well wishes from friends. Little did I know that just 2 weeks later, my life as I knew it would come to a crashing end. That was the night my husband gave me an 11-page letter saying he didn't want to be married anymore. You might be saying, oh, you must have known. Women always know. Well, trust me, I didn't know. I didn't suspect. It came out of the blue. Let's back up a bit. Prior to that event, life had been moving at a fast pace. Our oldest son was in college. Youngest son was in the 10th grade. My big job in DC was more than I could have ever dreamed of. I traveled. It was exhausting, but I loved it. My husband had a great job at a major oil company. We were buying a home in the suburbs of Houston. For two working class Black children born in 1949 and 1951, doors had opened for us that our parents could only imagine. We were taking care of my mom. At this time, she needed 24-hour home care, and we had incorporated all of this into our lives. And I thought we were moving forward and things were going great. To say that receiving the letter shocked, stunned, scared, and hurt me would be an understatement. I had been betrayed. You see, I had married early for love. We met in college and began our lives together. Tragedy hit us very early in our marriage. Our first child was born a preemie and died at 10 months old. His name was Kevin. I thought surely if we made it through losing him, we could make it through anything. I was so wrong. In fact, I was so wrong about so many things. If you can't tell, I'm in my 60s. And when I was younger, I thought I knew everything. After breaking down, I realize now I don't know nothing, as we say in Memphis. And guess what? I'm okay with that. Oh, by the way, when he gave me the letter, he had no plan to leave the house, no plan. So we walked around in that house like zombies, the living dead, no soul left in our marriage. I begged him to talk to me. He kept saying he had said everything he had to say in the letter, that I just needed to read the letter. Well, after asking or begging for a conversation one last time on a sunny Friday morning and being refused, I left home to do what I always did, take care of other people, run errands for my mother, buy groceries for the family. But that particular day, those errands went undone. I have no idea what happened to that to-do list. Somehow I found myself at the doctor's office and I told him the entire story. And after a long cry, I said, well, I have to go now. And the doctor said, you're not going home. Where am I going? I asked him. An interesting question since I didn't have a clue. He said, you need to go someplace to heal and to take care of yourself. I said, no, I'll take care of my sons and my mother. And just maybe I can put my marriage back together. And besides, I have a to-do list for today. He said, no, it's time for you to take care of you. What a novel idea. I was raised in Memphis, Tennessee in the 50s and the 60s. And the message to women, especially Black women, was that you took care of everyone else. No mention of who would take care of us. He said, I'm sending you to Spring Shadows Glen, a psychiatric hospital. I said, I'm not crazy. He said, I didn't say you were crazy. He said, I think you have PTSD. PTSD? Well, at that time, PTSD was only talked about as an illness for soldiers who had been in war. I said to him, I've never been in a war. He said to me, lady, your life is a war. Mm. And off I went for the first time as an adult to get a respite from what had become the wars of my life. While in the hospital, I learned a lot about myself, but I was not an easy patient. Don't forget, I thought I knew everything. After about 2 weeks, I had rested and I was actually enjoying the daily sessions with the psychiatrist. He would talk to me and I spent most of the time telling him that he didn't understand, that everything that had happened to me was my fault, that I had failed. I was a failed wife. I was a failed mother. I was a failed daughter. And I had failed as a top tier professional. Because of course, if I had done things differently, none of this stuff would have happened. He kept trying to get through to explain to me that things happen. People change. Lives take a turn. Blah, 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 blah. That's what I was having. I wasn't having any of it. Don't forget, I knew everything. So one day, while still an inpatient, I went to his office for my session. And because I'm a polite Southern person, I said, how are you doing? Well, he didn't give me the perfunctory answer of, I'm fine. He responded by saying, I'm not doing well. He told me that he had planned to do things outside that day, and now because of the rain, he wasn't going to be able to do what he planned. He then said he was upset with me. Upset with me? Upset with me? Wait a minute. I thought, I have lost everything, and now I have pissed off the psychiatrist. Another low for me. Now I am a failed psychiatric patient, in addition to all that other stuff. I asked him why he was upset with me. He said he was upset with me because it was raining. I said to him rather haughtily, why be upset with me? I don't control the rain. He said, oh, you've been telling me for the past 2 weeks that you control life and death, that if you had taken better care of your first baby, he wouldn't have died. If you had taken better care of your mother, she wouldn't be in such fragile health. You said that you control other people's feelings, that you had been a better wife, your husband wouldn't have wanted to end your marriage. You said you could control entire organizations, that if you had worked harder, despite having worked 12 to 15 hours a day and traveling each week, you would still have your greatest job ever. See, they didn't want you back at your big vice president's job after you've had a breakdown. You told me that if I was a better mother, despite all that was going on and their stable world falling apart, that your sons wouldn't be shell-shocked. Well, he said, just like you don't control the rain, you don't control any of these other things. I've been trying to get through to you for 2 weeks that none of us control all or most of the things that happen to us in our lives. All we can do is manage it, try to stay whole, and get through the tough times with help and support. Help and support. I really never asked for help. I was always helping everybody else. Well, that day I had to admit that I didn't control the rain or any of the other things that I was feeling so guilty about. In the midst of my hospital stay, I was allowed to go home for a visit to see my mother. She was too sick to come and visit me. We had role played at the hospital what I would do when I would see my husband, who was still at the house, taking care of the boys and helping with my mom's care. He wasn't a bad guy. I practiced my breathing. I practiced averting my eyes so I wouldn't make eye contact with him. And then I was ready, or I thought I was. My oldest son came to pick me up, and the minute I got home, I realized something was very wrong. My mother was struggling. I called 911, and she was taken to the hospital. I went in the ambulance with her, and it was evident she was having another stroke. I was only supposed to have been on leave from the psychiatric hospital for 3 hours, and here I am caught up in a medical emergency. I called my hospital from the other hospital and told them that I wasn't coming back, that my mother had been taken to the emergency room and was going to be admitted, and I was going to stay with her. They begged me to come back to Spring Shadows Glen. They said I needed to choose me. Choose me? How could I do that? What kind of daughter would leave her mother in the hospital having yet another stroke? That's not who I was. Even my mother tried to get me to return to Spring Shadows Glen. After much conversation and yes, prayer, and with the reassurance that my oldest son would stay with my mother, I chose me. Something I had never done before.
Yes.
It was now close to midnight, And the only person who could drive me back to Spring Shadows Glen was my husband. We rode in silence. I kept my eyes straight ahead, never looking at him. My head was pounding and my heart was breaking all over again. We arrived back at the facility after midnight and I jumped out of the car. He asked if he should wait till I was inside. I told you he was polite. And I shook my head and said, "You need to go now." And he drove away. Well, how did I know that you couldn't get into a psychiatric hospital through the front door after midnight? There's no buzzer. There's nothing but darkness. What was I supposed to do? I remember that there was a gate around the side of the building by the art rooms. I thought if I could just get around that gate and work my way back to the wing where my room was located, I could get in. I was determined to get back in. I knew that if I could just get in, I'd be okay. As I made my way around the side of the building in the dark by the overgrown bushes, I was confronted by a security guard. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I had to get in there. I belonged in there. Because you see, at that time, I didn't feel like I belonged anyplace else. He asked me my name. I told him my name was Vicki Floyd. My legal name is Virginia, and my married last name is Clark. But I had decided, since I lost my life, my identity, that I would go back to being Vicki Floyd. She was the happy girl, the girl who had it all going on, so happy and loved. But of course, the nurses didn't know the head games that I was playing. So when he got on his walkie-talkie and said some woman named Vicki Floyd was trying to break into the Spring Shadows Glen, they said they didn't have any patient named Vicki Floyd. I finally began to name staff members and to describe my room, and he called and asked someone to come to the door. When the nurse came, she said, "We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you. We're so glad you came back." The guard was dumbfounded as I fell up the steps and into the arms of the nurse, sobbing. She kept saying they were so proud of me. How could they be proud of me for leaving my mother? She said they were proud of me for finally choosing to take care of myself. The guard shook his head and said he had worked there for years and had known many people who chose to leave the facility, but he had never, ever seen anybody who was determined as I was to break back in. Well, that night I broke in and I began to break through. There was more heartache in store as my mother had to go to a nursing home and would pass away a few months later. I was released from the hospital after a few weeks and I came home. I continued daily outpatient visits. Everything I thought was gone. Everything I was gone. I had a lot of decisions to make. I don't remember much about the next 2 years. I dragged myself through the days. No job, no mom, no marriage, no life. God sent angels in the form of friends who would call. I never answered the phone, but I would listen to their messages on the answering machine, and I would feel their love. But I still felt unworthy because everything that I was so proud of was gone. Who was I? What was I supposed to do now? I knew I needed to stay in Houston until my youngest son graduated high school. I was not going to uproot him. Memphis was home for me, and I had been so happy there. My father was there and two of my lifelong friends. Maybe if I could just get back to Memphis, I would be okay. I finally made the move. My father wanted to make it clear to me that he did not need to be taken care of and that I better not think that I was coming home to take care of him. I fell to my knees crying, and for the first time in my life, I admitted to him and to myself that I was coming home for him to help take care of me. Another breakthrough moment. The journey of life has led me back to where I began, but I saw myself as a broken, failed woman. Most of my conversations with friends were about what was, what had been. How could I talk about a future I couldn't even see or imagine? My best friend, Carolyn, who is more like a sister and such a faithful and wise woman, said to me, "I know God has something for you. I don't know what it is, but as long as you keep trying to hold on to the past, you'll never move forward into your future." She told me, "There's something on the other side of through. You just got to go through." She was right. I was stuck in the past. I was doing the time warp. Once I began to release the past, forgive myself, forgive others, and make space in my life for a future, a new life began to unfold. I began to get calls for speaking engagements and training. And before I knew it, I was in the training and consulting business. Somebody told me that. I said, yeah, that's what I do. A whole new life began to unfold. One I didn't choose and couldn't see, but was going through, and I continued to heal, to forgive myself, and to forgive others. Before COVID hit us, I was traveling 300 days a year, training, speaking, consulting. My life is very different now. I hardly leave the house. I'm at the top of the list for those who will have, as they say on TV, an unsuccessful outcome if I get COVID. That means at my age and with my underlying conditions, I'll probably die. But I've had another breakthrough. My work has become virtual. And to my surprise, I'm reaching more people and more people are reaching me. If you can't tell, I've always been a big talker. But in the past few years, I found another voice. And I'm using my voice to talk about depression, about anxiety, about mental health issues, about resilience. I'm not ashamed of this journey. What good is a journey if it doesn't help somebody else, some other woman, some man, somebody? I also find myself speaking openly and boldly about the evils of racism and hatred and injustice. I've had to admit that we have a long way to go, that the world is really much not different than it was when I was growing up in segregated Memphis all those years ago. In some ways, it seems worse, but I refuse to give up. I refuse to give in. I always want to see the light, and I always want to be the light. Call me crazy. I'm learning, growing. Yes, at this age, I am still a work in progress. I have no idea what life has in store for me, but suddenly I just know it's time to start something new and continue to trust in the magic of beginnings. That's my story of the breakdown that caused me to break in, that led me to break through. I remember each and every day that there's something on the other side of through, and I just keep moving through this journey called life. Thank you.
Yeah. Woo.
Yay.
September 11th, 2001. It's a date the world will never forget, and neither will I. I was 27 years old and sitting at my desk on my second day at my new job when my coworker turned on the TV so we could watch the news unfold. We stared in horror as we tried to comprehend what was happening. I turned to my coworker and said, "My dad works in that building. Would it be okay if I went and called my mom?" I calmly called my mom to ask if my dad had gone into the city that day. He sometimes worked from home in our family home in Flemington, New Jersey. She said he had gone into the office that day because he had a business luncheon to attend. She hadn't heard of the attacks when I told her and assured me that it was probably a small plane, as sometimes they clip the buildings. She clearly had no idea of the severity of what was happening. She promised that she would call and let me know, but that I shouldn't leave work, so I didn't. About an hour later, my sister called and said we were all to meet at my parents' house and to get there as fast as I could. I never returned to that job, not even a phone call. After jumping in my car, I shakily drove to my parents' house. I clearly remember screaming, crying, and praying to God that my dad was safe and we would hear from him soon. It didn't feel real, and I didn't know how to feel other than I was confused and scared. My sister and brother were already there, along with some of my mom's coworkers. That's when I started to feel the big hole in my stomach, and my heart started to physically ache. We watched the news coverage in a state of shock, gasping aloud helplessly as the buildings fell. I fell asleep from exhaustion that night and woke up at 5 a.m. to my mom in the kitchen making coffee. We went back upstairs together to the guest room. my mom wouldn't sleep in her and my dad's bed. We laid in bed together, mother holding daughter. We watched the sun rise in silence as my mom whispered in my ear, "He's not coming home, honey." We both started to cry. I just wanted to tell him one more time that he was the best dad I ever could have asked for, and I loved him so much. As the others started to wake up, a few of us decided we could not sit around waiting. My sister worked for an advertising company, and they mobilized quickly, making over 500 missing flyers for us to hang in the city. I was very surprised that my mom was on board with us journeying into the war zone that was the aftermath. But honestly, I think we were her last hope, that her husband was out there waiting for us to find him and bring him home to her. That hour car ride to the park and ride in Newark seemed like eternity. Upon our arrival, my brother and I immediately spotted my dad's car. I burst into tears. He hadn't returned to his car, and all of a sudden it was a very real possibility that he was indeed gone. I still remember that feeling, like someone punched me in the stomach. This stuff doesn't happen to people like us. We traced his steps into the city via the longest path ride ever. Getting out of the subway, we had no idea where to start. My brother and I taped our dad's missing flyers to our shirts, hoping someone had seen him. I remember stumbling through the streets, feeling like I couldn't breathe. We hung flyers, checked hospitals, made phone calls. We even appeared on Larry King Live, all in desperate hope to find my dad. At one point, a nasty rumor reached us. A man was carried from the 100th floor, burned but alive. We had hope again. It wasn't true. As we walked up to a firehouse down past St. Vincent's, a gentleman looked at me and then my shirt with my dad's missing flyer attached, and he just started to sob and said, "Why, God, why?" Walking up to other family members, searching for their loved ones, hugging each other, giving words of support, kindness, and love. It was unreal. When movie star Sarah Jessica Parker and some of her friends approached us asking for a flyer to join in the search, any other time I would have been starstruck. This day, it didn't even faze me. Her husband, Matthew Broderick, he wasn't very amused when my brother excitedly welcomed him with, "Hey, Ferris Bueller!" Through my tears, I did laugh, I will admit, and I think you guys would have too. We returned to the city the following day to appear on Good Morning America. If my dad was in a hospital or had some type of amnesia, maybe someone might have seen him. We were desperate. And looking back, I think we weren't quite ready, or maybe we didn't know how to accept it. While we were there, we learned of the list of survivors at the armory. We waited in a long line of other family members trying to learn what they could as well. Once we were able to view the list, our hope was again shattered. Spotted a second list. One of body parts found. I don't think I was supposed to see this list, but I grabbed it, and when I saw the words, salt, pepper, torso, my dad had salt and pepper hair. I literally lost my footing and fell to the ground. My brother started yelling, and the Red Cross workers were trying desperately to comfort us, but they didn't really know what to do. We got out of there, and I collapsed on the sidewalk in sobs. It was then I realized that my brother and we had to get out of there. It was time to go home. I didn't want to leave, though. I didn't want to give up. We stopped on the way home at the store. I waited in the car. Gentleman pulled in the spot next to me, got out of the car, looked at me, and said, "I saw you on TV last night. Did you find your dad?" He looked so sad and we both just started to sob. When we got home, my best friend made me take a Valium. When I wouldn't stop pacing, ironically, it was my mom who made me take another one. It was so hard to feel normal, to not have that pit in my stomach, that feeling of helplessness, of not knowing, of emptiness. On the following Sunday, my family and I went to New York City for a meeting with Marsha McLennan, my dad's company. They had floor plans where everyone's office was and where the plane came in between floors 93 and 99. We knew then he was gone. There was no way he survived the impact. Not in his office on the 100th floor. Once again, that feeling like someone punched me in the stomach returned for yet another gut stinger. The days, weeks, months, and even years following were some of the hardest times I've ever lived through. Not only was my own pain heavy, but seeing my mom so lost and fragile, someone I've only ever known as a strong protector, was a pain I can't even explain. I tried to be strong for my family, but I couldn't quite deal with what was happening. What I do remember, though, was being so touched by kindness, by love, by amazing acts that people did for us. There were cards and gifts from all over the world, trees planted, memorials, and candlelight vigils. My dad wasn't forgotten. Those who loved him the most were surrounded by love. I do believe with all of my heart that every kind word, every loving gesture helped me on my path to healing. Perhaps they were part of what helped me grow out of this in a positive way. I remember my dad's memorial service. There were over 500 people there, standing room. One of my dad's coworkers got up to speak. He began with, "I don't make friends very easily, but Mark Rossweiler was my friend." By the time he was done, there was not a dry eye in the house. I've always looked up to my dad, but after that, I knew I wanted to be more like him than I ever thought. I wanted to make people feel the way he did, like they were the most important person in the world, and what they had to say, it really mattered. He made people feel comfortable. He was easy to be around. He was kind and caring, smart and silly. Family was most important to him, and he loved us fiercely. Somewhere along this journey of healing, I felt my attitude, my beliefs, and my values shift. I've always been a compassionate and empathetic person, but this intensified those feelings. I started really listening to others, putting myself in their shoes, wanting to give back and help my fellow man now more than ever. The silly things that mattered, they were no longer a big deal. The big deal was family, how we treat our worldly brothers and sisters, and that not everything is quite as black and white as the younger me had thought it was. If I hadn't gone through this incredible loss, I'm not sure I would have been able to handle some of the other tragic events that I've endured since then with the grace, the patience, and the tolerance that I have. There was the loss of my baby brother to a fentanyl-laced heroin overdose, or the time when I left my 15-year abusive marriage, moved to a new state, and rebuilt my life while living in a women's shelter for 3 months with my 3 children. Well, I wish with all of my might that I never had to go through losing one of the people I love the most. I gratefully accept how the real me surfaced and rose above like a phoenix. I can wholeheartedly say I love who I am and I love me.
I looked up into the face of my first grade teacher, trying to understand what she was asking of me. Do your parents know you're doing this? I don't think they would like you saying the Pledge of Allegiance since you're not American. I think when we say the pledge, you should wait in the hall. I responded with, I think it's okay. She was quick to say, no, it's not. It's not okay, as she pointed to the door and ushered me out of the room. And so began my routine. Month after month, my teacher would glance my way. I would lower my head and I would leave the room while my classmates committed their loyalty to our nation and to one another. It was 1986. I was 6 years old and in the first grade. My parents had immigrated from Mexico only a handful of years earlier, and until that moment, I was relieved from my claim to honor and protect the country I was born in. I didn't realize that there were people who thought I didn't belong here. Out in the hallway, I would stand by the hooks where we would hang our coats to start our day. I would run my fingers across those jackets, back and forth, feeling the different materials, wondering what it meant to be not American. Could someone pick out my jacket from the line of jackets and know it belonged to a Mexican? She made it sound like such a dirty word. That moment will stay with me always. For the first time, I felt shame for being somehow different, for not being American like my classmates. Although I looked like the other kids in my class, I was singled out, and the children in my class started having ideas about who I was and began labeling me. It happened slowly, then all at once. Because English isn't my first language, the predominantly white school I attended was ill-equipped for an English language learner. I was placed in a class for kids who had developmental delays. The kids in my class questioned my intelligence. Kids would see me outside of school with my parents and hear my parents speaking Spanish to me, and they thought they were mean. Kids wondered if I was being abused. All these things were beyond what I, a 6-year-old, could comprehend, let alone defend. My savior came in the form of a substitute teacher who ignored the students as they tried to convince her that I was to be excused during the pledge that morning. She shook off the accusation that I was not American and inadvertently broke the rule imposed by my first grade teacher. She ignored the kids as they were pointing at me, hoping to get praise for outing me. I wonder why I didn't speak out or ask for clarification. I simply followed directions. As a child, you were taught that teachers were to be entrusted and were there to protect you. I don't know what happened after the substitute's visit or what was said to whom, but after she taught our class that day, I was suddenly allowed to stay. I never questioned it. I suddenly belonged. And I thought maybe this would change the attitudes of some of the kids had already developed about me. But the damage was already done. I was in the 7th grade before I mentioned this to my parents.
Ugh.
They were horrified. It wasn't until that moment I realized that my teacher had treated me differently because of my name, because of my parents and their connection to another country. Her racism is even more appalling because it gave my first grade class a considered lesson in bigotry. It has been over 30 years since that incident in my hometown of Southern Oregon. Now as an adult, I look at what's happening in the world today and how immigrants are treated in this country. My family came here in search of a better life for their children. They wanted us to have the freedom to make choices, and those choices came with sacrifices. You see, I get a glimpse of what it's like for white Americans. Compared to the rest of my family, I don't look Mexican. I have shed my accent, and I'm well aware that my coloring allows me to pass under the radar. It gives me a unique perspective. I get to see how people truly act and talk about people of color when we are not there. And let me tell you, I don't just sit in the sidelines enjoying my privilege. I stand up and I speak out for those who are treated unfairly. I want nothing more than to raise my son in a world where people of all races, cultures are treated with respect, where boys and girls can go to school and have an equal opportunity at an education without being pointed out for being different. I think of my first grade teacher every time I finish the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I wonder how she understood this last stanza, how she could say these words knowing full well I stood outside in the hall. For me, those words are alive, ideals we need to pursue daily, and the hope of a world where everyone can dream of a better and more just world.
What if you could change the world for someone? Would you? You can, and when you do, the world changes for you too. I'd like to share with you my journey of how my life was changed forever. It had been a crazy 3 years getting regrouped after surviving an abusive marriage. My folks moved back to the Chicago suburbs from out of state to be supportive, but sadly, Mom passed away shortly after their move. I found I was living in a whirlwind of survival. Trying to keep it all together at times, I felt like I was juggling elephants. It was the spring of 1999 that one venture down to Central America changed my life forever. This trip set my sail in a direction I would never believe could be possible for a gal like me. Being a hairdresser, we truly do know everyone. A longtime friend was planning a trip to his home country of Guatemala to bring supplies for aspiring athletes. After much discussion and planning, my dad agreed to help my girlfriend with the kids, and I was able to actually leave my Chicago suburb to venture to Guatemala City with the donations I had collected. It was great. Guatemala City was beautiful. The people were so friendly and not at all anything I was accustomed to. We took a side trip hours from the city to a remote Mayan village. It was something out of National Geographic. It was raw, real, rainforesty. I had never seen thatched huts and children walking with heavy jugs of water before. Donkeys with riders or carts hauling goods went by every so often. The roads were pretty much rubble. There was a race being held in the village, and since I was a runner and I had packed my snazzy running shoes, I decided to sign up. The other runners were all 6 young men, all but one barefoot. It disturbed me that I was the only one wearing proper running shoes. The course was full of rocks, tree roots, and who knows what else. While we waited for the race to begin, a group of kids were on the sidelines watching us with wide-eyed excitement. They were so raggedy looking to me, but so cute. I watched them as they walked on a hot, hard surface, turning their feet black. I asked one of the young runners why they had put hot tar on the soles of their feet. He responded, because they had no shoes to wear. I felt ill, faint, deep sadness overwhelmed me. I flashed on my own kids at home who had never wanted for a thing, especially not a pair of shoes to wear. The race ended, and I did receive a pity trophy and round of applause for my efforts. I never looked at the villagers the same way again. For the rest of the trip, I struggled with the vision of the children putting tar on the soles of their feet. I just could not shake the image. A song running through my head: reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place if you can. Take a little time out of your busy day to give encouragement to someone who's lost the way. To share a problem that's not your own. We can change things if we start giving. Miss Diana Ross was trying to tell me something. Getting settled in my seat on the plane leaving Guatemala was beyond emotional. I knew what I had to do. Shoes. I had to collect lots and lots of shoes, and I would send them back here. A man sitting next to me listened intently as I shared with him my eye-opening story of the children's feet. I was still shaken by the images I had witnessed. He told me he was an orthopedic surgeon and also a parent, and teaching his own children about giving back, he signed up for mission trips to treat damaged limbs of children living in underdeveloped countries in Central America. I asked why the need. He explained, in these remote areas where they have no electricity, people walk. They walk for food, to worship, for work, for water. And in some cases, they're denied going to school if they don't have shoes to wear. There is no public transportation, and the little medical facilities they have that are available are not for the poor. When a child suffers from an infection or a foot injury, depending on the severity, he's been forced to remove the foot altogether. To these people, shoes are transportation, they are education, and they are health insurance. This information only strengthened my deep desire to take action. Upon arriving home, I couldn't shake the images and began collecting shoes. My youngest daughter, who must have been 5 at the time, came downstairs with 2 pairs of her shoes. Her generosity inspired me to get on the phone and start asking friends, family, and neighbors to donate their gently worn shoes. I explained I was on a mad mission to get them to these kids. We had gone to a neighborhood Italian restaurant that night to celebrate my homecoming. The table had a white paper covering on it. The kids were busy coloring and drawing shoes because we were discussing how to get the word out about our project of shoes. So we grabbed crayons and started brainstorming. Please give us your spares, spare a pair. I was thinking of those little feet, those little soles, and their little soles. Bam! That's the name of our project. Share your souls. Word had gotten out and shoes started pouring in. My neighbors started coming over and helping. For the first time I could remember, I would fall asleep at night with a big smile on my face. I felt truly called by the universe to lend a hand. My whole family seemed happy. All of us except my dad, who I refer to as Ed. Ed was not on board with this life I had began. He thought life was about responsibility and suffering. He thought that maybe I had gone a bit wackadoodle, choosing what he saw as a life of slacking off and personal fulfillment. His visits slowed down more and more, and I knew he didn't understand. It was so new to me and so wonderful. I kept to the task and soon realized instead of having 1,000 pairs of shoes I had planned to collect, I had more like 5,000. Panicked, I started calling airlines. No luck. I reached out to a friend who had just become our Illinois Secretary of State. He got us a meeting with American Airlines, and they agreed to ship my collected shoes, plus fly me and my 3 children back to Guatemala to deliver them. I wanted my children to feel what I had experienced. With a great sense of satisfaction, we donated the shoes to an extremely poor orphanage. I felt my work was done. As we said our goodbyes, the head nun asked, "When are you coming back?" What? Coming back? Nope, no way, no how. That wasn't the plan. I had a very rewarding and prosperous life back in the suburbs of Chicago. We returned home and found piles upon piles of shoes waiting for me. My heart was filled with joy. So I had to ask myself, is this my destiny? To collect shoes from people I hardly know and share them with children I will never know, meet, or see? The shoes kept coming and more volunteers. Still no sign of Ed. Time went on, and one sunny afternoon, while a dozen or so of the neighborhood kids were over sorting shoes on my driveway, a squad car pulled up. 2 officers got out, and I was handed 2 citations. One saying I was a public nuisance, and the other, my home was a public eyesore. A reporter came out, and I shared my story with him. The reporter was so upset, he put the story on the front page of the newspaper. That day, my phone rang, and a woman I never met offered me a free warehouse to use. My passion was spreading like a ripple made from tossing a stone in a pond. I was now beside myself with pure, sheer joy. It was time to make the movement legal and form a nonprofit entity. This was uncharted territory I was heading into. In the meantime, inquiries were coming in, asking if shoes could go here, if shoes could go there. My insecurities and self-doubt gnawed at me. Not having my dad around was getting to me. I was feeling alone in my fight. It was almost 5 years later, he came by my house. It was a welcome but guarded reunion. He said he had a check for me. He had his Knights of Columbus contribute to Share Your Souls. My dad explained when he was growing up, feelings like joy, gratitude, generosity were foreign to him. When he grew up, it was all about survival and providing. He wanted to understand why I was traveling across the globe now, delivering shoes to the poor. Over time, Share Your Souls gained momentum. We grew in notoriety and attracted new sponsors and supporters. We expanded our mission to include educating the youth on why our mission was so important. It was wonderful. Soon, hundreds of school, youth groups, and civic organizations started booking volunteer slots with us. We inspire people to share what they are blessed with those who have so little. They walk away with a better understanding of their world as well as their place in it. I have found my place. Over the past 21 years, we have delivered over 4 million pairs of shoes to the most destitute corners of the world. Refugee camps in Africa, orphanages in Central America, and disaster relief missions here at home. The only times I have looked back on my life was to thank God for trusting in me that I would stop, feel, and seize the opportunity for change and for the happiness that I experience each day, never taking it for granted. 4 years ago, I told my dad about a building for sale in an historic part of Chicago. I had my heart set on this rundown landmark building. Only because of my dad's support, we were able to buy the building and make it the permanent home of the Share Your Souls Foundation. Ed passed away 3 years ago, 92 years old. I have no doubt he died a happy man knowing our relationship was mended. It is never too late. I've dedicated our building to my dad. He saw the vision. I will not let him down, and I know he is smiling.
I was driving down the street and received a call that my babysitter had not arrived to pick up my child. I panicked. As we all know, the late fee, which sometimes is as pricey as $1 per minute, is a bit steep on top of the childcare expense. At this time, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. I parked my vehicle in the middle of rush hour traffic, got out, and started running down the freeway. Passing cars, I ran with all my might to get to my baby. As I ran, the scenery started to change. First, I felt like I was running through the woods. Then the mountains appeared on either side of me. I ran down the beach, through rivers, sands, quicksand, and even on top of lava, rocks, and ice.
Oof.
It was the most epic run of my life. Even the seasons changed as I ran. I felt the cool breeze of fall, the snow hitting my face in the winter. I ran through spring rain and the heat of the summer. Once I arrived at the daycare, I scooped up my child, hugged him, and cried a million tears, rocking and holding him close. Then I woke up. This was the most vivid nightmarish dream I've ever recalled. I woke up in panic. At the time of this dream, I was 5 months pregnant with my first son, and I had a lot of stuff to figure out. I called my mom the next morning and told her about this horrible dream. I said, if this is what parenting is like, the feeling of panic with time rushing by you, I didn't want to do this. It was as if my life was flashing in front of my eyes, and it was scary. This was not the future I planned for myself. See, I never really wanted to be a parent. I never craved being a mother. I never worried about having someone care for me at an old age, bury me, and I never cared about leaving any sort of legacy on earth. However, that morning, I woke up to the start of my new world, my new space, and my new beginnings. It was time to wake up and literally and figuratively figure out who I was going to be. That dream was preparing me for the adult version of myself, Jacquelyn Renee Monroe, mother to be. But why? During my adolescent life, I had a lot of issues with food and how I felt about my outer appearance. From being bullied about the complexion of my skin to idolizing Jane Fonda, I never felt beautiful. During my teens, it only got worse. I was so painfully careful to keep myself looking a certain way. At my homecoming in 1998, I received a formal photo from the event, and I didn't recognize the girl in the picture. I actually handed the envelope back because I thought they gave me the wrong person's picture.
Wow.
I had actually weighed more than I realized, and that girl looking back at me was everything I didn't want to be. When he handed it back to me and said, "No, that is you," I walked away embarrassed and ashamed. I went on a weight loss journey, the unhealthy way. I began to hate myself. Though I was never formally diagnosed, I believe I had body dysmorphic disorder, which led to me becoming an over-compulsive exerciser. I would run at midnight and even 1 a.m. in the morning. As I was running around the town, I started eating less food, which made me become physically weak. After healing from that failed attempt, I became a binge eater. Binge eating led to bulimia.
Oh, man.
And bulimia resulted in an even more severe condition called pica. I had a very unhealthy relationship with food and with my body. I even joined the military with these conditions because I hid it well. Well, I thought I did. I never admitted it, but my family started catching on. Fast forward to 2008, exactly 10 years of struggling with multiple eating disorders, I found out I was pregnant. Suddenly, I had no choice but to face my own illness or risk the life of my unborn son. By choosing him, I saved myself. When I said no to becoming a mom, God said yes ×3. And today, I am a successful single mother of 3. Thankfully, after all the physical damage I had done to my body, I had 3 easy and successful pregnancies. Through these pregnancies, I discovered myself and healed through my education. I studied my own struggles and earned a Master's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics with specific focus on nutrition education and wellness. If I had not had that dream and realized that I had to face my new reality, I don't know where I would be right now. I maintain a healthy weight. I teach group fitness, consult, personal train, and part-time faculty in the Natural Science Department at Parkland College. My weaknesses and my deepest struggle has become my livelihood and the foundation for our household. I revel in teaching my sons about healthy living and positive choices. Now I know who I was really running to in that dream so many years ago. I was dreaming of Jacquelyn Renee Monroe.
Yes, girl.
There's no delicate way to say this, so I'm just going to say it. On November 3rd, 2019, as a healthy 48-and-a-half-year-old woman, I nearly crapped my pants while walking the New York City Marathon. And we're not talking like you're almost finished and you suddenly need to go to the bathroom. It's going to be okay. The finish line is right over there. No, I needed to poop the entire 26.2 miles. And even though I can't see you, I can tell you're saying to yourself, but Jenny, why didn't you just stop and go to the bathroom? Well, that, my friends, is an excellent question. It's one I still think about 10 months later. I even go any further, I have to say my mom hates bathroom humor and would be appalled that I'm actually sharing something so ridiculous with you, but it is what it is. And apparently today's the day that I'm going to share this with my friends and all the strangers of the internet. So thank you. So why didn't I stop? As I said, great question. See, I did stand in line for a row of porta potties for about 90 minutes in the Run Village. And let's not even get started on why would that be called a village. But as I was approaching the front of the line, I realized I needed to do more than I originally intended. And then I got into my porta potty, looked to the side, and there was no paper, not a single square. Like nary a squarey, if you will. I also realized in that moment, I had failed to follow one simple rule from my marathon running friend, Gina. Bring your own toilet paper. So there I was, knowing there were many people still waiting in that ridiculous line, and I needed to move this along. So I made the difficult decision that air drying was really the only thing I could do, which eliminated complete elimination as an option.
Oh my God.
And then during the race, yes, there were certainly porta potties along the way, but on the course, I was terrified to stop and sit down because I would either not be able to get back up, marathon, or there would be nary a squarey. So I walked and I walked and I walked and I willed my innards into not becoming my outards. And to be honest, it's probably just a great metaphor for about how freaking crappy life can be. Because you know what? I didn't really even want to be there in the first place. And I have evidence to prove that. On April 21st, 2014, a solid 4.5 years before Pottygate, my Facebook status says, and I quote, and I did go back and verify, I've never, ever aspired to run a marathon. However, if I was to ever aspire to such athleticism, I would want to run Boston. Mind you, this was the morning of the Boston Marathon, 1 year after the horrific bombing, and I was especially inspired by all the patriotism and energy surrounding the event. While I am known as Sporty Spice among my friends, running is not my jam. My friend Marlene piped in soon after with the, let's do it next year, you and me, let's do it. I mean, it's not that far, right? Yeah, it's 26.2 miles. And like I said, never aspired to run anything, let alone a marathon. I mean, I've yet to find an affordable sports bra that would even allow me to consider being a runner. A few years later, my friend Vicki talked me into walking the mini marathon with her. The mini is still 13.1 miles. Granted, I didn't train, but even walking the mini was pretty awful. However, Vicki loves an adventure, and sometime soon after we crossed the finish line, like even before we had our medals, she said, I think we should do the Monumental Marathon next. No, absolutely not, I said, hobbling to get my medal. I have zero interest in participating in an actual marathon ever. Little did I know during either of those conversations that in August 2018, my never, ever get sick, hates potty talk, amazing mom would go from diagnosis to death in 60 hours from stage 4 colon cancer. Or that just 5 months later, in January 2019, my super strong mountain of a dad would be diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer. My life's work has been about helping people, And here I was, not able to do anything other than sit by my mom's side, literally from diagnosis to her death, and then sit and worry about my dad and his incredible wife from a 4-hour flight away. So I did the only thing I know how to do. I decided to figure out a way I could help people. The best way I could do that was to sign up for a team that was fundraising for, you guessed it, a marathon. And not just any marathon, the New York City Marathon. Despite my well-established zero interest in taking on a marathon, I decided this type of physically monumental challenge would hopefully be something I could do alongside my dad during what had to have been the hardest physical fight of his life. If he was hurting, I would hurt too. And I would rally my friends to help me raise $5,000 for the Jimmy V Foundation for Cancer Research. I'm sad to say my dad died pretty suddenly in May 2019, just 4 months after his diagnosis, and before any of my really hard training even got started. But I had donors invested, cancer patients to help, and Bev and Don didn't raise a quitter, so I got after it. In addition to bring your own TP, my friend Gina also said, if you can get to at least 20 miles in your training, you can totally finish a marathon. I set my sights and reached 21 miles 3 weeks before the race. And so, on November 3rd, 2019, as a healthy 48-and-a-half-year-old woman, with a list of donors written down my arm who had helped me nearly double my fundraising goal, I found myself in the Runner's Village for the start of the 49th annual New York City Marathon. I did finish the race. Even though I was really prepared, thanks to nary a squarey, I was still hobbling at the end. It took me about 2 hours longer than I anticipated, which means I was on the course for more than 8 hours. Yeah, I held it for about 10 hours when it was all said and done. It was awful. And it was pretty magical. Now, while I still have you, please let me take a second to offer a sincere apology to the small deli near Central Park that graciously allowed me to use the bathroom after the race. Let's just say it was rough. I mean, there's got to be a fuzzy security cam picture of me behind the counter that says, "Do not let her in here again." And finally, hear me say, I don't ever want to do another marathon, like ever. But if I did, I would want to do Boston, and I would bring my own toilet paper. Now, Bev would be appalled, like I said, that we talked all about toilet paper. So why don't we turn to Tera Lynne and have her play a great song for us?
Thank you so much for today. This has been absolutely marvelous. I see that, throughout life, we all have different stories. We all have our own struggles, and we all have our own scars that life has provided us with, but they are what make us who we are. They make us our beautiful selves with a good story to tell every once in a while. So to close this baby out, I'm going to perform a song for you called Scars. Sing along if you guys know it. Ready? All right. There's scars that heal, scars that fade, scars that just won't go away, scars on hands that pay the dues, scars and ink and the scars you choose, burnt from tailpipes, burned from matches, lovers' quarrels and midnight clashes, cigarettes and broken glasses, kerosene, gasoline, broken dreams, scars. If you really you wanna live, you're gonna have scars. When you go too high, then you come down hard. But it's who we are. Won't you show me your scars? Above your eyes from your older sister, above your mouth from that twisted mister, 15 stitches from a broken bone, talking trash, throwing stones off the bike and in the dirt, not letting go of fireworks, handlebars, crashing cars, kissing in backseats and breaking hearts. Stars from every time that a lie has broke your heart. When a dream gets ripped straight from your arms, it's part of your charm. I wanna see scars. If you wanna get to know